from Laura, seconded by Leslie at 117. Do I have a motion for a settlement?
So I'll make a motion on SE 12 from the First Selectman for a settlement of $45,000 in the case of Jackson versus the town of Greenwich.
Is there a second to that motion?
I can second.
Seconded by Nisha. Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And that vote is unanimous, 400. Okay. So, thank you very much, Valerie. So, again, for the record, we had our Assistant Town Attorney, Valerie Mays, with us for that. So, we are now on item CA1, the Commission of Aging, and they're requesting a $40,000 transfer for the lunch program. Good afternoon.
I'm Lorette Helmrich, I'm the administrator of the senior center. And the reason we are asking for this.
Pick your mic, sorry. It's
No.
green.
yeah,
Press the
There we go. Okay. As of
Maybe you should start again, because otherwise the
sure.
TV doesn't pick it up.
Okay, my name's Lorette Helmrich. I'm the administrator of the Greenwich Senior Center. In January 2021, our food service contract with Morrison expired. Up until that point, and during the pandemic, we were serving drive-through lunches to our members to help with the food problem that many of them were having at that time. And Morrison was providing the food for us, bagged, and we would deliver it to them in the driveway. When the contract ended, we were still in the midst of the pandemic, but Lori Contadino, the director of the commission, came up with the idea of trying what we call the taste of the town. So we contacted different restaurants in town who are providing us now with meals. And we went from once a week with this meal to twice a week. But what has happened is we've run out of our food budget because in normal operation with our food service contract, the bill is separated into 3 line items, which is the management fee, the food itself, and then custodial operations. What's happened with the Taste of the Town is that everything is bundled together in one bill and it comes out of the food budget. So we have the money in the other line, in the 100 line, and that's why we're asking for the transfer now. And also, again, we raised it from 1 meal a week to 2 meals a week. And if they could have it 5 days a week, they would love it, but we can't do that, so.
Any questions? Leslie?
My only question is on this particular transfer. It's clear that it's needed and that you have the funds in your other accounts. As you look at fiscal 23, does this operation structure that you have now, is that budget able to accommodate the new food program?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. We're having on Thursday the pre-proposal meeting, Lori, that's what it's called. So we're having the vendors who are interested in the bid coming in. We have no idea who that's going to be yet, but we have budgeted accordingly, and if we need to stop this program in the meantime till we start the new kitchen, we also have the ability to do that.
Thank you.
Nisha?
Yep. So I have nothing, thank you for the presentation. I have nothing against the transfer. I just have a general question. What's the I guess if you look at it, cost per lunch kind of differential between what you serve versus an outside vendor versus a restaurant? Is it dramatically different if it's?
No, because the town subsidizes our meal, we were, the members pay $5, and we are actually looking at that right now to see. I think we are all in agreement, the commission and the commission board, that we need to increase the price. Not dramatically, but obviously everything has gone up, and so we see that as coming down the road. But the town subsidizes is about $18 per person. So the seniors were paying $5, and it was about $18, covering all the costs of management, all of those other things I spoke of earlier.
Just to clarify, so the lunch is $18 per senior. I'm not interested in what the senior was paying from a
Right.
cost perspective.
Yes.
Versus it looks like you were doing a taste of the town where the restaurants were providing lunch. What
Yeah.
was the cost per senior in that versus what the town
That
provides?
is what it was.
The 18 is for the
Yes, we
restaurant?
capped it at that.
And then-
Some of them are less than that, but that was the most we were looking at.
And then what, I'm just trying to compare, so I'm sorry I'm being vague.
No.
Just trying to understand what is the cost per lunch for when the senior center provided it, not the taste of the town versus.
Yeah, it was
an
about
outside
that, when you figure in all
about
of
the
the other aspects of it, the
So-
staffing and all the other things, yeah.
Then I guess the question would be if the seniors prefer the restaurant lunch and they're kind of the same cost basis, would that be a thought process to do more of that and less of the?
Yeah, we
self?
have. It's just that it's very cumbersome because the restaurants have to pre-package everything, deliver it to us, and for almost 2 years, we were literally standing out in the elements, passing it through to their car. I think, we're building a new kitchen, and it will be more efficient in-house, I'm sure.
Any other question? So, Lorette, if it were similar to the other, again, I guess we have to resort, you're taking this out of transportation, you're not taking this money out of, say, professional, would your consulting contract have been in professional services?
Yes.
Why
The
are you
management
taking
fee.
this out of transportation rather than out of professional services? Or maybe Roland. Did you recommend that, Roland? No.
Well, because our contract with TAG also expired, so we had money in that line as well. I guess it doesn't really matter where it comes from. The money is there either
Laurie,
way.
does Laurie have any other comments?
You want to say anything else?
Hi,
Good
Laurie.
afternoon. So nice to see everyone. I'm Lori Contadino, Director of the Commission on Aging. So we just looked at where we had the most available dollars in the budget, and it seemed that we had the greatest area of revenue available to us or, to use for this purpose in transportation. And so we made the decision to have the transfer from transportation to food. And in answer to your previous question, Nisha, the cost per meal actually is much higher under what we had before under the Morrison agreement. The interesting thing is that we're serving today, we had 190 meals served. We never would have had that in one day for one lunch when we had our regular dining room cafeteria set up. So what we're serving per week, 190 or 200 meals twice a week, 400 meals, is exponentially higher than what we served pre-pandemic. We were serving, if we had a special event or a really special meal that the seniors enjoyed quite a bit, we would have that 90 to 100, and our room only held 100, the dining room. So our numbers are much higher than they were, and part of it is because some of the restaurants that have joined forces with us, the seniors have never sampled before, and at a $5 price point, why not, right? And so what it's done is not only has it in some small way infused the local economy over the past 26 months that we've been doing this, but also it's exposed older adults that never would have gone to Pasta Vera or Plaza Restaurant or, Prime Meat, Mumbai Times, to a whole different eating experience. And with that, they're going to these places now independent of the center. So the long answer to your short question is our costs were much higher because we had 3 town staff that also were part of the kitchen staff that we no longer have. The agreement for management was quite lofty, and we weren't serving as many meals as we're serving now. So this is quite a deal for us. It's just that because our bills are no longer fragmented into those 3 specific areas, they're a bundled charge for a full service, we depleted the food account.
So I have 2 more questions. Is there an age limit to get these meals? I mean, like an age floor. Just
Well,
looking around here. I'm
Yes,
just-
I know, I know.
And here we are meeting at lunchtime, so just.
Yes, you are.
You're opening yourselves up.
And if you are Greenwich residents, age 55 or older, you would be eligible for our subsidized lunch program. And the Commission on Aging, in their April meeting, changed the age guideline, eligibility guideline from 62 to 55. Part of our rebranding to try to attract a younger demographic. Now, we are attracting a younger demographic, that early 60s older adult. The 55s, and I'm a little older than that, but we're still employed and, really not able to join a senior center or participate in those programs. But they thought from a marketing perspective, also it connects us with perhaps the children of the older adults in the community that we strive to support and identify those that perhaps have some needs.
But we are subsidizing by $13 per meal,
We are.
55-year-olds.
Yes, I don't
To
think,
62.
yeah,
Which is why we're talking about the
which is why we're entertaining a price increase for the resident contribution. And we can run a report on, by age, who utilizes our lunch program, and I can get that data back to you. For the most part, we don't really have anyone between 55 and 62 that has joined, that's participating in lunch. We have a large influx of new younger members, and I think we've shared with you all historically, about every year we get about 200 new members a year, and it levels off. We lose about 200, we get a new 200, people move out of the community, and so on and so forth. Last year, we had over 300 new members, and in the past couple months alone, we've had at least 40 new members, and these are that younger, older adults, some recently retired, part of that great retirement, want to come in for our fitness programs, for our outdoor programs. So we're seeing a little bit of a metamorphosis in our demographic profile that we're serving, but
So will you continue takeout when you have your new kitchen?
well, we hope to get out of the food service delivery business when the cafe and our new cafe kitchen dining area, we hope will be complete by, let's say, February of next year. There will be options for takeout, but that will be all the food service vendor that is awarded the contract to administer the takeout and, the in-house, dining in-house as well as to the takeout. And the rest of the staff can go back to doing what we used to do, whatever that was a couple of years ago during this time.
because traditionally it was a hot meal every day for $5. So you would have soup and you would have vegetables and rice, potatoes, pot roast, dessert, salad, the whole thing for $5. And we recognize that younger seniors, baby boomers especially, are not going to want to come in for that whole big meal. And so we want to give them the options of grab and go and, it's just a salad if I want that. You had to buy the whole thing. It was all together. You couldn't just say, oh, I'll have a salad instead. So that's why we're different.
And
But still a great deal for $5.
It is.
You can't get a salad for
But we're
$5.
going to have a multitude of menu offerings, and they all won't be subsidized like the only meal that we serve now is subsidized. So there may be one selection of the day, one or two that are at a lower price point, that would be our subsidized meals, and then a variety of other offerings at market rate that would be available to anyone else that's a member to purchase.
Thank you. Any questions?
I was just going to add a comment. So I love the idea of bringing seniors together. And, I started a nonprofit in town about 10 years ago. And the first thing we did was really focus on our seniors and providing them subsidized lunches. And one thing I know is seniors love value plays. So if you're going to give them a lunch, doesn't matter how much money they have. If you give them something $20 and offer it for $5, it's amazing. And we did it around town, restaurants, similar to what you all are doing. But the real motivation was to bring them together and eat together and form those
Exactly.
friendships. So when the delivery service is just being able to pick up and get the value play, I can see why you had 400. I'm not sure that's the specific motivation, but I do think whether it's the kitchen providing the lunch or the restaurants, where I was going with the restaurant point was if that's equivalent in cost with all your management, then maybe that's something you should include as part of your normal day-to-day. But I also think there's a real nonprofit opportunity here for subsidizing senior lunches. And maybe I wouldn't define 55 as seniors, maybe I would define a little bit higher. But I think there's a lot of people that support that demographic and figuring out ways to bring them together. And if it's over lunch, I guess the only prerequisite would be to eat together and not do the drive-by, but just
What the
wanted to share
drive-through
those
was
2
strictly
cents.
a COVID protocol. It was
Right.
just to
Right.
get, and I think that's why
Yeah.
the response was so huge, more than just the lunch. For people to get out of their house and have a place to go during COVID was
Yeah.
like, and so, yeah.
Right. But now we're having the opposite problem, which is everyone wants us to stick with the drive-through. They don't even want to come into the building to get the lunch any longer, and that clearly defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. So we will only do pickup. They have to park and come in. They can dine in right now if they desire, so we have ample space set up for them to enjoy their lunch on site. But right now, many don't feel comfortable doing that. And we're just trying to use food service as a mechanism by which we can attract and get them back so that we can, begin operating the way that we used to.
So do I have a motion to approve this appropriation, requested appropriation?
I'll make the motion to approve the transfer of $40,000.
I'll second it.
Okay, so moved by Leslie, seconded by Nisha. And is this a routine transaction?
Yes, I'd say.
As a routine transaction? The motion is as a routine. Those in favor?
Aye.
So that's 400.
Thank you all. Lovely
visiting.
to see you all. Thank you.
Our next application is GEMS, and it's release of conditions. And I see Luigi here, but I don't see Tracy. Is Tracy coming? I thought she was. So,
Why don't we take up?
so Luigi, do you mind if we move ahead and come back?
Not at all.
I don't think, hopefully it won't be too long. I guess the next one we have is Harbor Commission? Are we? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I don't know many of you, but my name is Bernie Armstrong, and I'm chairman of the Greenwich Harbor Management Commission.
Nice to meet you.
So I'm here
Welcome.
mainly to ask that we continue in force. We have placed $2 million in the capital budget to dredge the harbor, Greenwich Harbor, and the area, especially around Grass Island. And that is badly silted in and unlikely it'll be much use as a marina unless we get it dredged. So what has to be resolved right now are two things, mainly involving the money is in the budget, but we need somehow or affect a change in the town's open to all policy, which is not true for Grass Island. Same thing we had 20 years ago at Greenwich Point when we had to change the policy so that other people could use it. In order to get the access to the federal funding, which has already been provided, we need to open up Grass Island or change the policy to do that. So we need some time. The legal department's working up I won't call it a game plan, but a series of steps that we have to go through within the town to get those building codes changed. And Stone McGuigan has been working, she's our point person on this project. She's an ex officio member of the commission, and she's working with the Army Corps of Engineers. So we're trying to get the legal side of this thing done and get whatever else we have to get done in the process so we can use this money to dredge the upper end of Greenwich Harbor and as well as the access to Grass Island. So we'd like to request that you continue this funding in place.
So are you talking with the Parks and Recreation Department?
Am I doing this? I'm sorry, what did you say?
Are you talking with Parks and Rec, Joe Siciliano, about this and opening it up to the federal?
No, we've had it in the budget, and I was just asked to come and present. Should we continue in the budget? That's part of the process. We've got to go to all.
Right, but I do think it would be I think you should coordinate with Joe Siciliano, who's the, director of the
I know he is.
Parks and Rec Department, and make sure that you're coordinating. Again, this is booked in Parks and Rec, and, just to make sure that our processes are consistent between what that department is doing and what your department is doing.
Okay?
Laura?
So what do we have to do to make certain it stays in the budget?
Laura?
I just have a question, Mr. Armstrong, about the federal funding. So obviously, this was put in our budget in 2020, so you're asking for an extension. Can you just remind us with the amount of the federal funding and how long it's good for? Is there a deadline for the federal
We
funding? Do you
understand
happen
this
to know?
$2 million has been there for about 3 years, maybe 4 years.
That's the federal amount?
The budget, the funding's been there. And what's stopping it is the town's got a closed policy on Grass Island. That has to be,
Right.
somehow or other, that's got to be changed, or we lose the funding and we lose the use of Grass Island as a marina.
And I think that's critically important that you talk to Mr. Siciliano about, make sure that the policies in the two different areas are consistent.
Yeah, we will do that, but I want to make certain this stays in the budget, because that could take time to do that. I don't know how much time I got. You
So-
pull this fund, if we don't carry this funding forward, then it's academic.
So I'm still a little unclear. Is there federal funding in addition to the $2 million in the town of Greenwich budget?
My understanding, it's federal money that is available to us if we change the town's policy and make it open to all.
So that still would need to be applied for?
Yes.
So $2 million is the total cost of the dredging, and it may come down if we get federal
I
money?
would not imagine it would be any more than that. We did the whole Mianus River for $2.5 million, and it's a lot bigger than this is.
Now, this sheet, because I actually went and pulled our CIP sheet, which I'm happy to share with my colleagues, it's online, and it says that this project is $7 to $9 million, and that was 3 years ago. So I expect that this project is probably, based on other projects that we're doing, more than that. And then it says, whatever the project costs are, the town will be required to share 25% of the costs of the extra work. So, and that may run over, the way I read this is another $1 million, and that was 3 years ago. So I would think it would be a good idea to maybe, did Roland just disappear on us? So I'll ask Pete. Pete, so I think this might need some more work, but we'll listen to the other questions. Pete, what happens if we don't continue this in force? Oh, here comes Roland again. Roland, we have another question for you.
It lapses if you don't continue it.
But can we, how soon does this lapse? I know we can keep things open. Roland, could we move this ahead to July for more details and memorandum? And still, and have it not lapse, have it
Sure.
continue into force?
The issue is when does it start? Is kind of it changes from project to project. In this case, the process has started in terms of doing this project. We have legal involved and we have things like that already going on. So you could make the argument it has started.
Okay, I do think, though, that we need some clarifications. I mean, I would just, and perhaps you know, we need to make sure that we're coordinated between the Harbor Commission and the Parks and Rec Department, and we may need more information about the project itself and its costs, and what kind of liability we have for additional costs. And we may need to know if it's been resolved, the waste disposal, the remediation disposal.
That's part of the dredging cost, is the spoils, disposal of the spoils.
But it's not only the cost, it says that it needs to be specially done in a, I don't know what a CAD cell is. It just can't be moved to some other place. Have we determined, or has your commission determined where this will go? The soil that's being dredged?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think maybe it could, who would you work with to find out the additional information?
Well, normally, once as you get the money to do that, the engineers get contacted, and they work out the plan to actually do it, which disposal of the spoils, they need to take core samples to see where they can dispose of this information. When we went to, I do know when we went to dredge the Mianus River, we kept getting turned down because sometime around 2007, an oil tanker truck ruptured its tank on the Mianus River Bridge, and all the contents, some 10 or 20,000 gallons of oil, came down the scuppers of that Mianus River Bridge and put a fairly thick level of oil on top of the whole bottom of the Mianus River. You couldn't dispose of those spools for anything. They were too expensive to dispose of. Taking them way out in the ocean would have cost a fortune. So over time, the Army Corps of Engineers continue to take samples, and sometime around 4 years ago, most of that sludge that was down there has dissipated with a couple hurricanes and things like that, and basically disappeared, and they could go ahead and dredge that river, and I think it was about $2.8 million to dredge the whole Mianus River up to about where the railroad bridge is.
Thank you very much for this additional
So what do we do
information.
about this? Do I need to just
Well,
get,
we've got more
is this going to get
questions.
carried
Well,
forward? or not?
we have more questions still. Just a second. Leslie?
So you don't need me anymore?
No. We have more questions.
Oh.
Leslie?
I just want to, and this is more to you, Ms. Tarkman, there may be another way of going about this, right?
Okay.
Because we want, the issue that's being requested of us is to continue the appropriation that they currently have. You're raising questions of how they execute it, which they're working on, and there's information to be gathered for that, but also are there additional costs? Well, if there are additional costs, they can't move ahead with the project without an additional allocation from us. And therefore, it's not like the project, by approving the continuation of this 2 million, where they're going to be able to move ahead with a project and commit more than $2 million. So we would have another discussion at that point when they may know more about the cost, about how much soil has to be taken out. At this, I'm looking at the sheet now that you have, and they've estimated volumes and they've estimated additional handling costs, but all of that was very preliminary even for this
Right.
estimate. So we don't know how much contingency was built into the $2 million.
Well, it does say that they might need another $1 million.
My concern is that if we don't act on this, to at least give the indication, yes, please continue to do your research, and if you can do it within the appropriation, fine, then we're sending the wrong message. I'm not sure that some of the answers to your questions can be identified by July, and therefore we're going to have the same issue in front of us in a month. So I'm just identifying an alternative path to my colleagues is let's propose this move ahead. We just continue the project, putting the responsibility on the Harbor Commission to keep.
Right,
Through.
but I just, we talked, this discussion here, there seemed to be some, Leslie, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I think you've made some constructive suggestions. I guess I would just like to have some additional information here, because it seems to me that during our budget process from Parks and Rec, we may have gotten some other information on related projects, and I just want to make sure that we're working on a connected basis here. And I think it would be very helpful if we had Joe return with Mr. Alexander next month. if we don't have to vote on this, if we just deferred our vote until next month?
I mean, he indicated that he's working with the Office of the First Selectman.
sorry?
We heard that they're working with the Office of the First Selectman. One of the selectmen is assigned and working with you to resolve the outstanding issues, which include the big issue, which is the access to Grass Island Marina. So
Right.
that is not an issue that we have typically a vote in, right? It's not really our purview to say yes or no, access or no access. That's the other bodies in town. And so I don't want to key our decision on that if that's your
I
intent.
agree, but I believe I heard, and we approved some things where we're trying to go in the other direction about reversing decisions that have been made in terms of federal, in exactly the same area. And I just thought if we had the two different departments together in the same meeting, maybe we could learn a little bit more to be more consistent. I have no problem with continuing it, but Laura?
Well, I think there are some outstanding questions, but I don't want to hold up. I think we should continue enforce the 2 million appropriation that was in the 2020 budget. That's only been 2 years. We've had it, pretty much halted a lot of projects in the last 2 years.
3 years.
Well, okay, 3 years, but still, 2 years, we've halted a lot of projects. I'm going to guess that Greenwich Harbor hasn't been dredged in a very long time, and that this project does need to be done. We have operations there. We want to be sure we offer a clear channel. So I propose that this is a fairly routine item to continue in force for another year, and hopefully people will meet and, work on the appropriate action steps, and we'll get more information. But I certainly don't want to ask this gentleman to come back in a month. And as Leslie said, I very much doubt we're going to get all the answers in 4 weeks' time.
If I get some kind of notification of what exactly you're looking for, because it's hard to stand up here and take notes.
Right.
When I'm trying to talk to 4 people. So
Right.
send me
So
some kind of
I think we're going to have to follow up with you a little bit, but if, again, we just spent a.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I think that the Harbor Management Commission, select person Janet Stone-McWiggin, Joe Siciliano, I think people need to get in a room and figure out, are we all on the same page with legal? What do we need to do? But again, I don't, our action is to continue the $2 million for another year. And I'm happy doing that while these things
I don't see a
take
problem
place.
with that.
Yeah. I don't know how often the Harbor Management Commission meets. I do know during the budget,
The Harbor Commission meets once a month.
once a month, okay.
The third Wednesday of every month at 6 o'clock, right here in the Mazza room, unless it's by Zoom. So we could call a special meeting if we had to, of some urgency, but I think what I'm hearing here is you want to hear some more feedback from us, especially if we talk to Joe Siciliano.
Right, on
what
the
he thinks of
details.
this. Well, that's what Janet McGuigan's working on right now. She's trying to work out with AMITA the process we've got to go through to get this open to all policy change.
Right, you want that open to all policy change, and I think we've got other people working in a different direction, and I just want a consistency of how the town is working together. So Roland, you're telling us that we have no problem deferring this meeting until deferring this until next month, July.
You could take this up in December and say, we're going to close it out. It can be closed at any time.
Okay, so,
no-
and we don't have to approve this in this meeting, correct?
But just
Just asking you to carry it forward for another
Right.
Well,
budget.
it's not being removed. We have to take some action one way or the other. So, I'm sorry?
Actually, per the charter, we have to take action to continue a project, although Roland is telling us, while they haven't spent a dollar, they've been actively working
Right.
on the project, and that could be defined as the project having been started.
If you remember in the past, a lot of these dredging projects hung out there for years because we didn't know when we'd get permission to actually start the dredging. We had to coordinate with the state and other towns who were dredging at the same time and things like that. So it would sit there for years before it actually got spent.
And again, Leslie, I think, there are many actions that we take in July after looking at what our books look like in June. So deferring it for a month, I don't think is necessarily an issue. I think it's better that we have the information before we make a positive action. But if you don't agree, and, you know, Nisha.
I'm just trying to understand, what do we gain by deferring? Like, even, let's say we have additional information, and I totally understand that you need more information. I just don't think, I think we only have one decision to make, which is to continue, so I'm not clear what just help me understand, what are we gaining by deferring, if that's what you're
Well,
proposing?
again,
Yeah.
I think that what we were hearing today is they want an action taken by the town to open up this area to the federal government. And we have another part that we just approved, I believe. Is that not correct, Mr. Siciliano? What we approved in our current budget going the opposite way, buying ourselves out from yes, Mr. Ozesmayer, our chairman.
I just have, I think there's lots of questions. There could be lots of questions in terms of budgets and other things, but to me, the question I would have, and maybe that can be answered Tuesday night, is, it's been 3 years, and this whole question of the town policy about how the dock is used has not been resolved. I suppose my question would be, if there's a reason that the town or the selectmen or the board of selectmen, don't want to do that, or there's really major impediments to that, getting that done, then that to me is the question I would certainly, maybe we don't have an answer today, but I would certainly ask Tuesday night, because if that's the case, then, this may go nowhere. But if they're completely committed to get this done and they feel that they've got legal on it, then to me, it feels like a go. But I would ask why it's been 3 years and it hasn't been resolved, and what's going to change this year? I mean, I just don't know the answer. That's the question I personally would have.
Again, this is too complicated for me to understand. We went through a budget cycle where we have another part is talking about, in the same area, buying ourselves out of the federal program. And this is parallel in the same area, talking about negotiating to buy in. And I think that since this is also booked in Parks and Rec, deferring this decision to make sure that the communications are working and with the law department, or, in the, I guess, the Board of Selectmen's office. To me, this is a very inconsistent process, but I'm happy to take a motion if that's what we want to do. I don't think deferring it by a month hurts, but if we wanted to have a motion, we can do that.
I was just going to add, the commonality in this is the law department is aware of both sides of the issue, it sounds like. So,
Really? I don't know.
well, I'm
That's a
assuming they
question I
are,
would ask.
because they've been
Mr.
involved with
Siciliano.
Parks and Rec, and they've been involved with the Harbor Management Commission. So, Roland, are you telling us that it really makes no difference whether we act in June or July? From a process standpoint, I just want to, I support moving this along. So I am comfortable voting to continue in force today and ask that we get additional information. I think that will be provided to us versus not acting.
Well, normally I like to act, but here's a case where we don't have to act. And, to me, to go in two directions on exactly the same area of town is a little unusual. So I won't be, if it's a motion to continue, I will not be supporting that motion.
So why don't I make a motion to continue? We'll see where that goes, and then if that doesn't go anywhere, we'll take up your motion. How does that sound?
I don't have a motion. I'm just going to wait until July.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so Laura Erickson move, Leslie Moriarty second. And this is a motion to continue in force $2 million.
And I think, as Laura said, we can approve this continuation. You can still ask the parties to return in July to continue that discussion and get more information. It doesn't have to be tied to this action.
Well, I think that usually this is committee where the work is done, so if this is, we're making the motion today, then I think that that work all has to be done between now and next Tuesday, and it may or may not be a holiday weekend. It is a federal holiday and a state holiday. I don't know. So we've got less time. I know the town is having a celebration at noontime on Friday, so I don't know what that means. So
Call for a vote?
I will call for a vote. So, you know, again, I would normally defer this, and so therefore, you know, I will abstain and that on this vote. I'm not going to vote against it because I don't have the information to vote against it. So, Laura?
I vote yes.
Leslie Tarkington is abstaining because we don't have the information.
I
Leslie?
vote yes.
And I vote yes as well. I understand your concerns, Ms. Tarkington, but at this point, I think
Okay.
I
So
don't see
that
the point in
vote is
deferral.
3-0-1, and you don't have to return in July, but my guess is you'll be asked a few questions before Tuesday night.
So somebody going to get back to me with what you need back from us? I can't write notes when you're all talking back and forth when I'm standing up here trying to talk to you. What you
Okay.
need to. I get a copy of what you're asking me to get.
Okay, we'll talk with Roland, and you'll hear from Roland Geiger, our budget director.
So can I just
very
add?
much.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add, this is probably a non-routine item?
I think that this should be a
And
non-routine
Mr.
item. I
Armstrong
think that-
should perhaps plan to come on Tuesday evening to our
Yes,
meeting?
yes, that's a good idea. Mr. Alexander, did you hear what,
It's Armstrong, right?
what's his name?
He introduced himself as Bernie Armstrong. He signed the,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Mr. Armstrong, did you hear that? You'll probably, but you'll hear from our chairman, be asked to return on Tuesday evening to the BET meeting this upcoming Tuesday evening. Process question. Did we move to take this out of order? Did we have a motion?
Not
to take it?
officially, but
We did. So to further the record, do you think we should have? No. No? Okay. So we now are going to welcome GEMS. And I don't know if they want to bring, when they come up, if they want to bring Luigi? So we welcome GEMS and their executive director, Tracy Sheetinger, and we have a release of conditions, and I will read that. And it says, subject to release by the Board of Estimate and Taxation upon receipt and acceptance by the BET of a report from GEMS respecting its operation, personnel, and finances, including a report on construction progress at GEMS Station 4, 1237 King Street. So we welcome you, and we know you're doing very well because we've read your report. And we thank you for your service.
Thank you for having us. Would you like us to go over operations first or the finances first?
Quickly, operations, I think.
Sure. So I know this is our quarterly report, but we've completed our FY '22 fiscal year as April 30th of '22, and we had 5,520 responses and 3,864 patient transports to the hospital, 95 over our actual budget. So we were pretty accurate there. The call volume remains inconsistent, meaning some days are extremely busy, some days are extremely slow. For example, at some point in May, we had a 24-hour period where we did 42 responses, which is unheard of for this town. Yet the other day, we did 14. So again, for our fiscal year '23, month of May, 2 weeks of June, we are trending back to, dare I say, normal, pre-COVID, but you know, you never know. So that's sort of where we are with our transports. Our overall cardiac arrest save rate for fiscal year '22 was 19%, and that was done on 22 cardiac arrests that were inclusive. Again, we do respond to about 40 a year. Not every single one of those is included in this report because not every single one of those patients is transported and receives care because of injuries incompatible with life. So the 19% that GEMS had for '22 was against a 8.4% nationwide overall save rate. There's something that EMS has been tracking over the past 2 years called ROSC, or return of spontaneous circulation, meaning if somebody's in cardiac arrest, their heart has stopped, they're not breathing, our goal is to get their heart pumping for them again and to start breathing. So ROSC is your heart is beating again. So that save rate for this fiscal year was 45%, that were able to get their heart beating, as opposed to 13% nationwide. So those are just some of our statistics. I'm sure that you're aware, we did take on the emergency manager role of May of '22. So he has started and he's working diligently, closely with the Office of First Selectman, every agency in town, senior centers, and all of our key players. I know I've spoken about the public access AED program that we started at Todd's Point initially, and we are working diligently, thanks to Luigi, over the years. Most recently installed 2 at Byram Park, and 1 finally at the Greenwich High School Stadium and at Fields 6 and 7. Fields 3 and 4 should go in, another public access AED in between Fields 3 and 4 once they're done with that remediation and final construction. We do have slated, but of course there's supply shortages everywhere, on AEDs for Roger Sherman, Bruce Park, Western Civic Center, Grass Island, Havemeyer Park, and that's where we stand right now.
I believe there's one at Binny as well.
You're right, you put it in. Binny Park, there's one at Binny. This past April 1st, we did our fundraising gala because if you're not aware, since Greenwich EMS is a private not-for-profit, we have the ability to fundraise, and all of our fundraising dollars go towards our capital goods, such as our ambulance, these AEDs, our cardiac monitors. So the board organized that. It was in person again, and it was a successful night celebrating 35 years of Greenwich EMS. And then I have Station 4, so I don't know, I defer to you, Ms. Darkington, if you'd like us to hold off on that further update and have Tom do financials, or do you want me to just keep going?
I think, if you can continue to stay with us, Luigi, through the rest of us, then I would just say continue with the financials, and then we'll get to, the gem station, if that works for you.
Works for me, I'm all yours.
Great. So as Tracy said, we ended our fiscal year April 30th. We had a positive net change in operating assets of $538,000. This compares to $349,000 prior year, an increase of 54%. We had a very strong year on the revenue side. Total revenue of $7.7 million was 5% ahead of budget, or $372,000, and that was 7% higher than fiscal year '21 by $487,000. The main driver here is our patient revenue, as Tracy just alluded to. It's beginning to recover toward pre-pandemic levels. We're not quite there yet. However, when we budgeted, obviously with the great uncertainty in billable calls, we were able to come out ahead of budget. And just to kind of speak a little to that volatility here, we had a great May, and I looked back probably 4 years. It was the 3rd highest month we had on record. But to contrast that, in February, we had our 2nd lowest month in that same time period. So the call volume is just very hard to predict and all over the map. So patient revenue was 13% ahead of budget, or $297,000 ahead. On the operating side, operating expenses were $7.1 million, 2.3% under budget, and that's $166,000. And the primary drivers of OpEx were per diem medic and EMTs, workers' comp, and vehicle maintenance, which were all 122,000, 37,000, and 27,000 under budget respectively. That's it.
Right? So, thank you. So should we, then?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to ask a question about personnel services. At one of our prior sessions, I think you were having difficulty recruiting paramedics, and I just wanted, if you could update us on, is your underage on personnel services because of vacancies or no overtime, or could you just give us a little color on that?
So it's kind of both. So there's difficulty in recruiting. We have, is it 3 open medic positions?
3 open paramedic positions, 1 EMT.
And 1 EMT. But the underage on the budget is really due on what we budgeted for per diems. So we budget money for other, EMTs and medics from other companies to fill in slots. We're unable to get them because there was a shortage there being held at their current positions. So our existing employees are filling those slots, which drove that underage on that line.
Thank you.
Anyone want to ask any follow-on questions, or should we hear from Luigi Romano? So we also have with us today Luigi Romano from the town's Building and Construction Department. And because this particular condition, as I read earlier, also asks for an update on the progress of the GEM Station 4 out in King Street. So that work has been following under the leadership of our Building and Construction Department. And Luigi has earlier midday, I think, or sent through a memo. So not everyone may have seen that memo, so you might want to go through that.
I have that in front of me. I was planning on reading it for everyone. So I released a memo this afternoon giving an update on the status of the construction project up at King Street for GEM Station 4. I'll read that to the record now. Epifano Builders Incorporated, the contractor, broke ground on the new GEMS facility at 1327 King Street on November 29th, 2021. Since then, they have performed rough grading of the site and excavated for the installation of forms for the building foundation through December. Concrete footings were poured in January as weather permitted. Underground utilities, including the stormwater management system, were installed through February, and initial framing had begun at that time as well. In March, the well and septic systems, along with the associated piping, were installed. In April, concrete slab was poured and completed. Rough plumbing was installed on the building interior, and the underground tank for runoff collection was installed. Framing continued into May, followed by the delivery and installation of the roof trusses. To date in June, the roof trusses have been installed and the building is currently being sheathed. They're wrapping that up yesterday when I was on site there. Next steps include the completion of sheathing, which is just about done, followed by the installation of the roofing assembly, along with additional mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. The work completed to date accounts for approximately 40% of the overall project. It is currently under budget and on schedule, scheduled to be completed in October of 2022.
Great. Thank you very much for the detailed report. So,
You're welcome.
Tracy, do you have any additional comments? Is it from your perspective? How's it going?
We did have, quite a few weather delays, but that's what winter in New England will bring you. But everything else appears to be on track. Again, I am not in construction, I am a paramedic. But I did happen to bring a screenshot if you guys wanted to have a look at what it looks like
Sure.
as of today.
If you want to either bring that up or whatever, that's great. Thank you very much. So we appreciate that.
I see it when I go to the graph.
It's good.
And we have some extra for some of our guests.
Can I ask a question about how are you managing current Medic 4 operations during construction? You're at a temporary site, correct?
Yep, Brunswick School offered us a room on a temporary basis, so that's where they're operating out of. As far as all of our shifting patterns, when multiple calls start to come in, we do move ambulances around from station to station. It's called system status management, so they may not always stay there. But at least for the time being, it's relatively, 100, 200 yards down the road. Our shifting patterns remain the same. So however, the crews would certainly are anxious to get back into their own station, but they're happy to at least have a place to go, put their lunch, take a load off for a minute or two. So we appreciate Brunswick offering that.
Leslie?
Now, I just want to make the motion to approve the release of conditions on $2,391,152 for the first 6 months of fiscal '23 for GEMS.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Nisha seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And, it's
Routine.
routine? So this is routine? So, unless you hear otherwise from our chairman, you don't need to show up next Tuesday. And our meeting is on Tuesday rather than Monday, just normally. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good seeing
Thank
y'all.
you for your extra work there, Luigi. We appreciated it. So your pictures, your screenshot looks good too, Tracy. And we'll share these pictures with the BET. Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on now, and I think the next is PD2 from our police department, and this is $19,050 for an approval to use a state JAG grant. So we welcome you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good
Yes,
afternoon to you.
I'm trying to get the exact, the $19,050 is part of the Justice Assistance Grant. It comes out from, actually, it's federal grant that's divvied up between the states. This is our portion for the year. We pretty much get this every year, but the amount's different.
So do we have any questions? Laura?
Just an operational question out of curiosity. So are these sort of roving license plate readers, or are they at a fixed spot on Greenwich Ave?
These are fixed license plate readers. Our Axon Fleet 3 cameras that went into our cars just this past month, they are actually mobile, and they're actually incorporated into those cameras. So that's the mobile element. These that we're talking about here is actually a fixed position.
Oh, these are fixed positions. And so where are these located? Or I mean, maybe that's,
Yeah,
but can you give us are they in central Greenwich? Or are they elsewhere?
we try to keep them in key strategic locations where you see a high volume of cars passing through. Been a great tool. We have, obviously, we all know about the issues that we've had with car thefts in town. We've actually had, just in the few weeks that we've had one up, where we've had a stolen car from somewhere else, was on our hot list. We were actually like to kind of track it coming into town, alert all the officers, and they effectively chased him out of town. I don't mean a car chase, but just they could see the heat was on, and so they left the town. So it's actually assisting us in doing proactive policing.
So they know how to look for them, but we don't, huh?
Well, we have, there's a lot of ways, but this is a great tool that we think can assist us in crime, preventing crime.
Leslie?
No, I just wanted to ask, clearly this was number one on your list to buy this equipment, but are there other pieces of equipment that you considered that are on your wish list for future years?
There are always, this one just happens to fit in with the parameters of the JAG grant. With that particular price tag, this one kind of, matched right in there.
Thank you. No other questions.
So is this like the same brand or whatever, so you have the same software as you have on the cars? Is
Well,
it- or commonality or something, so, well.
it's common
these-
with our fixed ones, but because that mobile one in the cars is from Axon, that's the proprietary software from that. However, we are able to cross-load the lists. So if we have what we call a hot list, we can program it into each of them. But they're not per se an integrated system, I think is what your question is.
Right, and then the parking department also has these, right? I mean, the, parking fund. So is that yet a different brand and software, or is it is there commonality with?
So interestingly enough, the same software that operates the fixed ones is similar to the ones they use in parking services. But because of the dashboard cameras that we use in the police cars, that is a separate system, part of Axon. They're not exactly the same.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have, Nisha?
Just a quick question. I'm sorry, I was trying to find the name of the product, but it looks like this is a new product. It's not you're not replacing an existing reader. This is a new technology that you're putting. I'm just trying to understand is there going to be a recurring cost to this in terms of either software or maintenance, or is this kind of good for the next few years in terms
The
of?
system itself is good for the next few years. We
Yeah.
do pay for the connectivity, so that the camera can be remotely accessed.
Yeah.
That's,
Not material.
right,
Yeah,
less than $100 a month type thing.
okay. So no really recurring cost beyond this initial implementation?
Right, however, the life expectancy,
The life
which
expectancy of the
we
product.
would expect at least 5 to
Years.
10 years, if not longer.
Okay, thank you.
So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
So Nisha moved to approve,
I'll second.
Leslie seconded. And is this motion is a routine item? Yes, as a routine item. Those in favor? And that's unanimous, 400. So you probably don't have to come back on Tuesday night.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So we have tag, and it's our next item up. And so we welcome back Mike Miller, and we're very familiar with tag because you visit with us quite frequently. So perhaps because of the frequency of visit, and because we know that one of our members has a very hard deadline coming up very soon in terms of timing, perhaps you'd just like to pick out a few highlights, just a couple, to tell us about. Or maybe someone, is that just a couple?
I'll be happy to be as brief as you would like me to be. So, just very briefly, the 2023 plan that we submitted, we now have an update to that plan. Won't reduce or increase the bottom line, but it will help increase the achievability of that plan. When we presented the plan, we had $160,000 of revenues that we were not sure where were going to come from to help support food delivery. Part of that was due to an expectation that there were going to be 13,000 deliveries over the course of the year, stepping down from about 430 weekly household deliveries at the beginning of the year through 225 about mid-year, and then stepping down to what we believe will be the post-COVID plateau of 100 weekly deliveries, which is still 100% above the pre-COVID level. So I've been meeting with Neighbor to Neighbor and Department of Human Services to determine if there was a possibility to accelerate this step down. And in fact, we're at a point now where we believe there's a 6-month acceleration to those targets that I had just mentioned. So we're now expecting to begin the year, instead of 430 households per week, at about 225. And we expect sometime during the first 6 months of the year to step down to our 100 target per week. And with that, the expectation is total deliveries for the year would move down from 13,000 to 7,000. And as a result of that, 120,000 of reduced expenses will require 120,000 of reduced revenues, and therefore that 160,000 of unknown now is reduced by 120,000 to 40,000. We're currently working with Neighbor to Neighbor and the Department of Human Services to identify other opportunities to achieve or mitigate that $40,000 gap. So that's where we are with respect to the plan. I'm more than happy to talk about it in more detail, and I'm more than happy to talk about our forecast for the current year, but I'll defer to you to let me know what direction you'd like me to take.
So Leslie, do you have any questions? Or you, it's
No, I
very
mean-
detailed information.
Yeah, very detailed information. Clearly, there's always probably the questions that you face every day on how you're going to fill that gap, where the business is coming from, how firm the YW and the Board of Ed revenues will be. But I know that you're working through those issues while you're running an active business. So clearly, the issues or the challenges in front of you are a little smaller than you faced and than you have in the past few years. So should make life a little bit easier. But your cash flow, I guess, through the end of this year was dependent on the ARP funding, which is not yet being released, but you're working with the town on getting that
That's correct.
function. Thank you.
Laura?
Mike, can you give us an update? I believe you had talked about rebidding on the regional transportation. I'm forgetting the term, but can you give us an update on where that stands?
Absolutely. So we had, up until 5 years ago, had a contract with the state through their regional transportation district in Norwalk to transport people in what was known, and may still be known, as easy access business. We currently transport people in another state program, which essentially is for that region of town that is outside of the easy access corridor, which is 3/4 of a mile from Route 1 in either direction, and 3/4 of a mile partway up King Street. So anybody who is resident in those areas and is above 60 years of age or disabled would receive very reduced transportation, which is highly subsidized by the state. We do that transportation through the Dial-A-Ride program for everybody that lives outside of that corridor. So the new contract that we are bidding on is expected to begin July 1st. We've had several meetings with Norwalk. They've been very, very positive meetings, and they've basically come out and said, we'd very much like to do business with you again. We appreciate all the changes that have been made, both in personnel and the way the operations are running. And so they have gotten back to us several times with additional requests for refinements of our bid, and are very much looking forward to getting the bid finalized so that we can actually start providing business on July 1st. I do come from the philosopher Yogi Berra school of determination, so it ain't over till it's over, as Yogi has famously said. But based on all the feedback we've gotten, it looks like we will most likely have, of the 13 potential runs that they're going out to bid, 8 hours per run on a weekday basis, we would probably achieve anywhere up to about 5 and possibly more as a result of the fact that they would like to have multiple organizations. So we would never get 100% of that. Getting 5 runs would probably put us in a situation where it would be several $100,000 of revenues that would increase our plan. And this is not in our current plan for 2023. So this would be an increase to our existing plan. Our expectation would be break even, so it would not increase the bottom line. Although there might be some opportunity for that. We wouldn't budget for that, but that's the expectation, that it might be an additional several $100,000 of revenues and related expense.
Can I just ask a follow-on?
Of course.
So that requirement that they had 5 years ago to have the vehicles housed in Norwalk, that's been eliminated, right? Wasn't that one of the issues?
One of the major issues that made us uncompetitive in bid, and this came about right at the end of the bid process last year, so we couldn't really respond to it in time to get the bid. As a result of all the changes that are being made, they did say to us they would be very happy with us continuing to operate out of our Riverside location, and so we would not need to have our drivers drive vehicles up and down 95 during rush hour in the morning and the evening after beginning and the end of each day. So from a practical standpoint, it allows our bid to be much more competitive with all other bids.
Great. So is there a motion to release conditions?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to release conditions on $154,000 for TAG.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by
And I'll say,
Leslie and seconded by Nisha. I'm sorry,
and
what's it?
suggest it be routine.
And suggest to be routine. There you go. Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
400, unanimous. So there you go. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank you
for
all for
joining
your
us,
support,
Mike. It
always.
looks like, at this point in time, unless you hear from our chair, that you won't have to return next Tuesday
Great news.
evening. for
Thank
the
you.
BD.
Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you. And have a good summer.
Thank you.
So Roland, I think, are you up now? Economic conditions report. You're going to give us the good news, right, Roland?
It is pretty good news. Conveyance had its second largest month ever, $1.2 million. That includes $500,000 for the sale of 10 West Putnam, which finally went through in May. But building permits are still good, and you can see that the interest is also starting to go up. Even though the balances, the cash balances are trending lower, but the income is going up.
So just as a comment here, so far this year, we have conveyance fees collected of 8.9 million plus, and our budget is 5.5, right, for fiscal '23? And we have building permits collected of just over 6 million, and our budget is 4.5 for fiscal '23. And we have budget for interest, we've collected 392,000, and our budget is $1 million. But I did take the million and divided it by 12, so we have to achieve about 83,000, but we're moving up. It's 78,000, it looks like. And this was before our, really much real estate collection, property taxes. So, so this looks good, Roland.
In terms of the total revenue, we're a little over $7 million. Over half of that is higher taxes than a year ago. Bridge revenue is about, and other revenue like that is about 800. Permits, is that right? 1.4, and sped is up $950,000 over last year.
I'm sorry, I missed something in there. It didn't seem to come through.
Building permits,
Building permits, what? I'm sorry.
it's up $1.4 million over last year. That's what makes up the $7 million.
And bridge revenue.
And bridge revenue, yeah, I had
And
bridge.
and
the
the
higher
sped- and
taxes.
the sped grant for BOE,
Oh, sped,
excess.
And on the expense side,
Before we leave revenues, I just have a question. You added 3 columns to this chart, one column being the 11-month budget, which is just a proration, right, of the 12-month budget. So it's saying that it's estimated about 37 million of monthly revenue was in the budget for June, if you will, for June of '22. I was trying to understand the expectation. If our revenue is 7.2 million ahead of last year, that amount should continue an increase through June if we just use out.
if it stays flat, yes.
If it stays flat, okay.
On the expenses, kind of running the way we have been. We haven't backed out the Board of Education ESSER expenditures yet. That was just approved by the RTM last night, so it's still kind of muddied in here. But when we look at the spending to date and the spending that we expect for another month, we could be looking at between $8 and $10 million surplus from the revenue, from the expenditure side.
Which would be, does that assume encumbrances upon about the size of last year, or is that still a variable?
That's still a variable.
Can I ask a question? This is really a question for you, Peter. Has there been any change with these updated numbers about your projection for fund balance? No?
So Roland, just out of curiosity, when do you think that ESSER will be processed through the finance department?
We're meeting with some people from the Board of Education tomorrow morning over the budget that's going to be set up and find out, I assume they're ready to move that money out shortly thereafter.
And I guess what I was really particularly interested in was the capital side too, so open capital, so maybe by the end of the week or next week?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this? Thank you, Roland. It's always really good. I was going to say, I thought I had here. I thought I had put it in my package. I am looking for, maybe it's back. No, it isn't here. Anyway, what I was looking for was the CPI rates, which I usually.
We probably don't want to hear those this morning.
we know.
Well, actually, Leslie, it's looking better than the last couple of months for our area, so it was actually going to be more good news. Maybe it isn't in this particular envelope. Anyway, so thank you, Roland. And so, where are we on our? So, Miriam, would you like to join us? And we have here the proposed HR committee, human resources forum for adding people and putting a process to something that I think will serve everyone well. So, and I assume it means adding or deleting too, or reducing. We need those numbers sometimes when we do some of that work too. So this is great. Do you want to just give us an overview? Sure. I think what we have in our package is the chart to show the outside parts of it too.
It is. Thank you, fellow board members. And I'm very loud, and this is even louder, so I'm going to step away. This template, you've all seen it because we used a form of it during the budget season, and it really came about because the HR committee was receiving a lot of ad hoc requests, whether they were interim or even as we were going through the budget season, from different departments, and they would all present changes to their TOO via email and Word documents and PDF. And the hope was really to create some consistency of data process and presentation. So this template kind of came through that. Then at the HR committee, we decided to actually formally vote on it, partly because once it was out there, there were departments that were kind of chomping and changing it at will to show us the information as they wanted to. So we wanted to lock it down and vote on it. But part of that, we really wanted to give the budget committee the opportunity to make it as part of your process. You'll see that at the bottom of the template, there is an opportunity to vote on it, for the budget committee to vote on it as well. It's pretty self-explanatory. The idea is really to get numbers on salary and benefit costs to the town, as well as justification from the departments. Our committee has vetted this document. I also received very good comments from Ms. Moriarty, Ms. Vasiliotis, Roland was very helpful in providing guidance on the fixed costs and what numbers we should use, and Ben Brannion provided comments as well. I did send it to a number of people. As I mentioned in the HR committee last week, the one area I didn't send it to was the Board of Ed. As you know, in the HR department there's been some turnover, so the hope is really if you have any changes to it once and you want to adopt it for your committee, I will then update it and then send it over to that department as well, to the Board of Ed, to GPS, to provide comments, the new HR folks there. So again, fairly self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
So I think at the HR committee, the one point, I think the form was great, and I didn't have any actual comments to the form itself, but just to the fact that, putting a process in place is excellent, but to make sure that the BET, per its charter, can, override the submission of the report or other parts of it. I mean, that's per our charter responsibilities, and I believe that, I don't know if every member, but the membership, I think, including you, Miriam, said that yes, so that anything that the charter says will obviously be dominant over this itself. But I think this is excellent, and I have no comments on it as such.
I'll just add, just very briefly, that the hope is that this will actually reside with the HR department and Ben Brannion. So whenever a department comes forward, they need to go, regardless of jurisdiction, because as you know, there are a number of groups, whether it's the town clerk or retirement board, that actually don't feed into the office of the first selectman, but you still need to go to Ben Brannion, you still need to go to HR to get approval of that. The responsibility to ensure that this template is filled out in the correct way and that it's done is actually with the chair of the HR committee on the BET, so we receive it first because we tend to meet before you all, but and then in the end, when it's signed off, it's actually going to reside back with the HR department as part of a file, and so there will be a history in the files of all of our approvals, so, and that will sit with the HR department.
Laura?
So I think this is great. I mean, this is a real improvement in process, so thank you and to the HR committee for moving this forward. Is the intent that this would be used for any changes in TOO at budget time as well as interim?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be part of any changes in TOO, we would get this form?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Any other questions?
No, I think it's great. I do just want to say that I passed the reading test because I'll point out one typo.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So this has not been approved as such by the HR committee, is that correct?
No, we did approve it,
You did approve
400.
it. And do you want any action from us? I mean, do we need to,
No.
This is informational and it gets the message out and this is great. Thank you, Miriam.
The only thing I would love is if you choose not to use it as part of your process. I would hate to have the department heads want to send it to you, so just let me know and I'll remove the committee vote from the bottom of the document.
At the moment,
No, I think it'd be helpful, just like a CIP sheet, which
Right.
puts all the assumptions on one piece of paper. It would be really
Right.
helpful to us, especially as we get explaining, we get qualitative information, well, we're moving the part-time down to this many hours and that one, and the ins and outs are sometimes hard to follow. So I think this would really help us be much more consistent with the information we're getting and the ability to make a decision.
May I ask Roland a question? Roland, so would you expect the same report, and Miriam, don't escape so fast, would you expect the same to be used like for the grant employees for the health department, or would this change your process at all? Are you thinking about using this, let's just say?
I don't know what we would be doing with, I'd have nothing to do with people changing their department structure.
But I mean, I just meant like for informational for the grant employees, like when we approve a grant for health department, I'm just.
Well, they would show up in the,
But this is just a form to give the information so that would,
but,
so would Caroline be using this, say, I don't mean to be, just an example of one.
We have already approved Caroline's position on the ARP money.
Well, I was just thinking more in terms of future,
I
not
mean, if
knowing
it's
what's coming.
approved, if it's approved, it'll show up in the salary schedules or the TO schedules.
Can I just follow up on your question? Actually, this is to you. So I'm trying to think where in the process for grant employees typically will get a grant. We expect that they're paying their benefits, but we don't approve a grant position. We approve the use of the grant money. So
We
it's
do.
a little,
But in that process, Leslie, we approve, remember, like their benefits and everything, because that's what we're appropriate. So that's what I was thinking about.
during the budget process, or you're talking about even,
Well, it can be interims too. Sometimes we see them as interims too. I was really just, think about how many we've done, like for the health department or something like that. I don't know, we'll work that out, because the form is great, but that's just little details.
Yeah, that won't come through.
Yeah. Nisha?
Quick question for you, Miriam. So the idea of this form, just so I'm not missing something, is to do it before approval, right? So, but when, it's not after the fact, this is the budgetary impact, this is just gonna help us make the decision.
Yes.
Right.
So the process is the department head will work with Roland to get the finance numbers as to, all the changes that they want to make to their department. They will then need to go to Ben Brannan to get that approval. They need to go to the HR committee to get that approval. If they have a board that makes decisions, they need to go to their board to get that approval. And then it will come to the head of the HR BET committee, who will then say, yes, you've got everything we need. You can now come before us for us to say yes or no. But yes, we have to
Got it.
approve
And
any
then-
changes.
And then on the, I think that I think you meant to show the total cost of the town of Greenwich as a sum of the salary and the benefits. I think I saw the footnote that the benefits are going to be calculated based on the maximum amount for that individual, right? That the family of four. I think that would be a good practice to continue to use that and not make it, specific to that person who might be, just so we have a general idea of the ongoing cost, even if that one individual, for example, was single or, whatever, was bypassing the benefits.
Right, so thank you for that question, because that's actually very important. The way that this is actually calculated for the proposed, it's based on an average for that particular bargaining unit, and that's a number that comes from Roland. A discussion that happened at our HR committee is we would like to know what the max cost would be.
Right.
What's our worst case scenario? So our compromise, because it became a little unwieldy to put it within the chart, is in the footnote, you can look down and see what that max cost is. So you will only find that max cost in the footnote, but in the actual chart, it'll be an average based on the numbers of the bargaining unit.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Miriam.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So our next sort of little topic here is just really to let everyone know, during our budget process or afterwards, I see Karen's disappeared on us, Karen Fasciolotis, we did talk about the reports that were due per our budget resolutions. So Karen followed up, and she has provided a list of, I think, 5 budget resolutions that require annual follow-up reports. I think one of those reports was submitted during the budget process, and that was the one from the trees department on the trees, but the others weren't. So Roland has circulated this list out to the appropriate departments, and he'll just, it's my understanding, Roland, you'll just circulate out anything that's returned just to the other BET members. So this is, if you get something that, a report related to the budget resolutions, this is thank you to Karen Fasciolotis for going back and reviewing. But it does say something about needing a better tickler to make sure that we don't miss these things during the budget process. So, and some of them aren't necessarily due during the budget season, they're due after July 1 or something, right, Roland? So, it's a follow-up. And so thank you to Karen for putting this together, and we can put it aside. We'll get these reports, but next year in the budget process is something to think about. So we thank Karen, and then the final, oh, I'm sorry.
So the one thing we can also think about for next budget cycle is if we need all of these reports, right? I mean, what do we do with these reports once we get them? So just putting that in our head, like, do we need all of these reports? What purpose do they serve?
Well, I mean.
Putting it out there.
To be honest with you, I think that we all could read the budget resolutions, better off doing it in off-season, because I think that some of them probably need to be modified too. So I think your point is well taken, but we could, really look at many budget resolutions. I think some of them may be obsolete, and, it needs a good review, a practical review, and then coordination with the law committee, because they're the ones that overall put it together for our budget season. So, yep, agree with you. Which then gets to budget guidelines, and this is just like, no, we haven't finished fiscal year '22, we haven't started fiscal year '23, but people are very anxious to get to fiscal year '24. So, basically, at this point in time, just kind of looking ahead at, and looking behind, what, were excesses, what could we do better, basically lessons learned. So, I've been trying to get around. I think some of us have started talking. Leslie and I have started some of the discussions about some of these points. I think Pete's been involved, and others, and Roland, and Dan, and certainly want to talk to, Nisha and Laura, and then, I think our key departments too, in terms of what we can do better. We have a challenging, I expect, budget next year for fiscal year '24. And normally, we don't really get started with the budget guidelines themselves until when Roland can begin to put together a little estimate, which Roland will fall somewhere plus or minus Labor Day. And so that's our timing, because Roland too has to close out fiscal year '22, get ready for the audit on it, and then move towards, opening up fiscal '23, but there's a little period in there where they correct things or whatever. And so that's just an overview. Nothing other than that, unless there's any questions. And then, so finally, we get to our minutes. So do we have motion on the minutes for the minutes of May 10th? Laura moves them. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Nisha second them. Those in favor? Aye. Leslie, are you voting?
Yeah, aye.
4-0-0.
And I'll move the minutes of February 1 and February 3.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Is there a second?
These
I'll
are the
second.
minutes as in the packet?
No, they aren't. There was a,
Just confused. Leslie had some changes. I'm just.
no,
So February 1 had minor changes. I'll say they were non-substantive, circulated to everybody. And February 3 will be as in the packet. I'll forget my second iteration.
Just for clarity. So.
yeah. And I did send out an email to all of you, so at one point.
There were a lot of emails this morning. I'm just
Okay.
trying to.
Okay, so, so those in favor, Leslie moved and Laura, was it you that seconded that one?
I seconded, but
Oh,
it's fine.
Nisha, thank you, Nisha.
Yeah.
Those in favor? Aye, so that's 4-0-0. Okay, and so I think we're ready to adjourn, but I wanted to make the comment that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 12th. It will be at 9 a.m. in the morning rather than 1 o'clock, so I just want to remind everyone and the public too that the meeting is at 9. Again, it's on Tuesday. And then this particular agenda says the Cone Room, but we've reconfirmed that it's really the Town Hall Meeting Room. Initially, it was scheduled at Cone, but it was changed then to the Town Hall Meeting Room. So that's a correction to what we're saying here in our agenda. But we didn't republish the agenda just to change the room for next month. And then there'll be plenty of notice on that anyway. So is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
I'll
anyone?
make a motion.
So Nisha? And Leslie seconded. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. That's 4-0-0. Okay, so we are adjourning our meeting at 2:50 PM. And so we thank everyone, and Roland and Pete, thank you very much. And we